special thank you to our sponsors of Russ Reels Live, Your Launchpad, Emily Harmon Coaching and Consulting, and Sugar Vibes Donuts. Have your dreams become buried under a mound of responsibilities? Contact Emily Harmon, Certified Professional Coach today at emilyharmon.com. Not feeling aligned with your work? Find your newest passion today at yourlaunchpad.com. And for amazing donuts in Lebanon, Oregon, go to Sugar Vibes Donuts today or call 541-405-4069. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Russ Reels Live this Thursday afternoon at 4 p.m. It is 4 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, I should say. I don't know what time it is where you are, but that's what time it is where I am. And I am so glad you're here. I don't care what time it is. I am just glad you made it today. And we are going to have a great time today. This is going to be a special show because we are going to just have a knockdown drag out with Scott and I, who love each other, we'll tell you up front, and who are super great friends, but have a slightly different take on failure. And so today we are going to talk about that. But first, I just want to thank you for being here today. Thank you for being part of Russ Reels Live. You know, this show is every Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, if I didn't tell you, and it broadcasts on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. And I am just so glad that you're here. You know, this community is amazing. We have just such an amazing group of people, and I'm glad that you've joined us today because it's just going to be a lot of fun. Usually I have a big panel. This is a panel-driven, topic-driven show, and we definitely have a topic. And the panel today, though, is just Scott and I. And as many of you know, we are co-hosts of the Experience Live with Russ and Scott every Wednesday morning at 7 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And Scott has guest hosted for me many times on this show. He and I were friends long before we were live streaming, and he really gets a lot of the credit for what I'm doing today. First of all, I thank God above for all the blessings and direction in my life and strength, even through the challenges that I've gone through. You know, God is good, and I believe he works all things for the good, and there's a lot of good things going on. But Scott was really a driving force in directing me and helping me form a lot of the things that I'm doing, including my book, Befuddled, Live the Life You Choose. I tell you, that book would not have come to fruition without Scott. And when he told me, you got to think about writing a book, I'm like, you are crazy. And so now, not only have I written a book, not only do I have a companion workbook that goes with that, by the way, that's available either at my website at russhedge.com is where you can get the book, or Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all of those places, any online bookseller, Target, Walmart, wherever you want to go, they sell it. But the companion workbook is only on Amazon right now. So if you want to pick that up, the book is available both in ebook and in paperback, and the workbook's only available in ebook right now. But getting ready to work on a collaboration coming up this weekend that is Rattled Awake with Lonnie Ray and many other friends. Super excited about that. And also working on my second book, who Scott actually inspired as well. I'm working on currently. That should be out in 2024. And so super excited about that. But anyway, he has just been a great friend. And I just want to remind you again that we are available on this right now is live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And, you know, part of YouTube would love it if you'd subscribe and become part of the YouTube community. You know, it's growing. And not only do you get all of this information, but you also get the information about marketing with Russ. And we are rebroadcasting the Experience Live with Russ and Scott every week. And just to put a shout out there to my amazing assistant, we need to make sure we're always doing that. And you and I should talk about that, but I want to make sure that that happens. So anyway, and the real life alert is going off right now. So there you go. Also, I wanted to put up here, it's russreels.live. That's where you go to my YouTube page, russreels.live. And I do have that here somewhere, but for some reason at the moment, there it is, russreels.live. I knew I found that somewhere. Uh, Go there and you can subscribe now to my YouTube page. That would be amazing. Also, right now, you can share this out, whether you're watching live or on replay. Please share this show and let other people know. I see a bunch of people in the comments already, but I want to make sure that you let people know. You can tag your friends, share this with your friends, whatever. And I would love if you would do that. So, anyway, thanks so much for that. We're going to be talking about failure today. Is it really failure? That's the question. And I'm at an unfair advantage because Scott is not on the screen yet. But I want to read something to you that is my one of my just amazing uh, mentors I look up to. Unfortunately, I've not met John Maxwell yet, but I've read a good share of his books, and he is an amazing person. This is what he says. I want to read this to you to start the discussion off, and then I'm going to bring Scott in. But it says, what is your definition of the word failure? For some people, failure is a mistake of any kind. This is John Maxwell, what he says. For others, failure is missing a set goal. For others, failure is a constant state of being, a way of thinking about themselves and the world. For leaders, failure is different. Now, John Maxwell is a big leadership guru around the world. And so he loves to talk from a leadership perspective. J. Wallace Hamilton wrote, the increase in self-sabotaging behaviors is evidence that many people are training for success when they should be training for failure. Failure is far more common than success. Poverty is more prevalent than wealth, and disappointment is more normal than arrival. Now, is that a big downer, a big negative? No, because what he's doing is we're talking about the reality of life. And again, this is one person's perspective. But it's simple. Hamilton says, when you're a leader, failure is your friend. In leadership, it is not a question of if you fail, it's a question of when and how you respond. So a lot of it boils down to perspective. So I'm just going to read that for now and bring Scott in because he's all ready. So here he comes, D. Scott Smith. Woohoo! Hey, Scott.
Hey.
How's it going, my
Russ,
friend?
I love the beginning to the show and the picture that I believe Miriam Haugen did the photo shoot for you. But there's the picture of you in the grass with the trees, and your arms are outspread, and it looks like you were the model for the statue in Brazil.
There you go. It does. There you go. Well, that open arm thing is just kind of me. So, yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm fine. I'm fine. Yeah. Anyway, yes, my beautiful wife is checking on me to make sure I'm okay. So anyway, the thing is with good friends like Emily, or not Emily, I'm sorry, Miriam. I'm thinking of two different people. Emily's one of the sponsors of today's show. No, Miriam really catches real life, and the pictures that she does are just me being me. And that's what I love about that. That's what I love what I get from her. So, Scott, before we get rolling, give everybody just a little update. You, Mr. Motivational Listener, tell everybody a little bit about you.
Yeah. So, first of all, Russ and I, we went to school together, but we didn't know it. We actually went to Oregon State University at the same time, and we walked across the same stage in the same ceremony. But we met each other through networking when Russ was leading the marketing for a local company. And so he was always there, and we just became great friends. I was on the board, and then he became a part of the ambassadors. It was a great moment, but it all came about from networking. And anyone that has been near Russ knows that you're going to fall into his networking gravity well. So that's the background about how we met. I work with businesses. There's this invisible hand. There's some force keeping them back. They're looking at other business owners, since those owners have time for their family and for hobbies. Well, you need a chief of staff, so call me up. as they say in my LinkedIn profile, one conversation can change your life or change your business. And as they say, prove me wrong. So schedule some time. Let's chat.
Well, and I highly, highly recommend that for everybody because, like I said, Scott has been such a friend and a mentor to me. And, this is one thing that, Scott, I love about live streaming. So, for those that don't know, since it's been happening and I alluded to it, I'm just going to tell everybody real life happens. Sometimes when you're live, it just happens live. So, right before Scott and I were talking, we're a minute away from going live. And I have newly acquired, been blessed with type 1 diabetes because of my cancer treatment. And so I've decided to grab hold of that and move forward and be positive and learn. And it's quite a challenge, but I'm learning. But I had a low blood sugar alert all of a sudden right before, and it's been beeping at me here. I had to run. I'm okay. I'm all right, everybody. I had to go take some, drink some apple juice and eat a banana. My blood sugar's stabilizing and on its way back up. I'm all fine. Sometimes it just catches you off guard it was a busy afternoon and it just kind of caught me off guard. But this is what I love, Scott, about these shows and about live is that people get the authentic, real you and I, right? This is what's happening to us all the time. And this is what happens when you really network and connect with other people like you're all about, Scott, and me too. You get to learn really about them. It's just not the polished, perfect, here we are people. It is the actual rough and dirty what's happening. So, hey, I want to remind everybody as we get started here too, before Scott and I really dive into this, is to tag your friends, let them know what's going on. Omar is here, and I just had an amazing short conversation with Omar on the run, but he was a great guy, and it was such a pleasure to be able to talk to Omar. And so just want to remind everybody, let people know the show is on right now, and we want you to be part of this conversation. And so anyway, do that if you wouldn't mind. That would be so great. And Scott, okay, I am ready to dive in. You heard my intro, a little bit about what John Maxwell says, but I'm going to give you one more quote. Actually, I got a lot of really good quotes, so I'm going to give you one more. Really. Yeah, I'm getting people on my side here. See, here we go. So I love what I used it the other day on social media too. I love what Winston Churchill says. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. And I think that there's so many things when it comes to good things or bad things in life that derail people. And one would be failure. People look at when they don't accomplish something, just like John Maxwell said, people look at failure differently, what it really means. And so I just like that. It's not fatal, though. It is just the way you look at it and how you respond to it. Go ahead.
Well, I'll just respond to Omar. I look forward to meeting you as well. So we'll grab some time and chat. Well, I'll start off with a quote then, and I'll jump right to Winston Churchill. And my favorite quote from the former prime minister is, "If you're going through hell, keep going."
I love that quote too.
Yeah,
that's a great one. I would highly recommend what he says too, by the way.
Absolutely. Just and part of that says that our circumstances are not permanent. And some will say it came to pass, right? And which means that whatever the situation is, it's going to be different. And this is one of the things I love, Russ, about your book is it says live the life you choose, right? So and I'm just going to key right off of that. So failure, I don't like the word failure, and we'll get into some of this in a bit too. But I do believe in choice, because as you say, befuddled, live the life you choose, and the follow-up book to that is life happens, and then
what? You choose.
Yeah, exactly. right. So I'm going to use your own words here for a bit. Some people have said that failure, and I'll turn it back over to you here, that fail is an acronym for first attempt in learning. And maybe that's helpful, but it does start to presuppose that your first attempt will fail. That is, in your mind, you're saying, I'm going to try it, but I assume that I'm going to fail. And let's get into that a little bit, because I don't think that we jump into anything intending to fail.
No. Oh, I agree with you. And actually, I think going back to what I read from John Maxwell right off the top, people view failure in so many different ways. And some people get stuck in failure because however you want to look at it or to define it, they get stuck in failure because they are into this whole self-sabotaging mindset. And, we can call that limiting beliefs. We can call that imposter syndrome, call that so many different things. But I like how John Maxwell turns it around and how he says failure is your friend. And he talks about failing forward, meaning that if you stumble, whether you call it failure or not, if you stumble in the road and you are having challenges, keep moving forward. I always say, take the next step. My journalism professor at Oregon State, she was my favorite professor, and she would say, just do the next dumb thing. When you're stuck, when you're feeling like you don't know what to do, just do something, just keep moving, and you work yourself out of it.
Well, John Maxwell definitely is a learned man, has had a ton of experience out there. Lots of people have been through his program, and there are a lot of certified John Maxwell coaches out there. So I'm certainly not going to stand here or sit here in my office and say I'm better than John Maxwell, but fail forward. This is an interesting point, and this comes all back to the language and the mindset. And so, Russ, I'll ask you a question, and is the future ahead of you or behind you?
Definitely ahead of me.
And this is all based on language. So in preparation for this, and I'm going to admit that I prepared to talk to Russ on this about failure, but my take is around language. And so out of Stanford, Dr. Lyra Boroditsky,
that's a tough one to pronounce.
Scientific American. She had an article. It was based on her research, published in Scientific American, and it talked about these different perceptions in language. And one of them was our spatial relations. And so that here in the United States in English, we tend to think of the future as being in front of us and the past being behind us. And in fact, when we talk about the future, we tend to lean forward, and we talk about the past, we tend to lean back. But other languages are different. Some languages, like down in the Andes, they actually think of the future as behind them and the past in front of them. And so when they talk about the past, they lean forward and so forth. And there's some other fascinating things here that I think it's the words that we use that shape our thoughts, or we can use those words to make decisions. And so if I say I'm going to fail, or I want to fail forward, I'm thinking that my future's ahead of me, that spatially, that if it's my first attempt in learning, I'm going to go in knowing that, hey, it's probably going to fail, but that's okay because I'll learn from it. And I'm not saying we shouldn't learn from them, but I'm thinking I want to use something different than fail forward or fail fast. I want to change the language that we use. So I'm going to stop.
Oh, you're gonna stop right there. Okay,
I'm going to stop right there because I don't want to. This isn't a monologue.
They're changing the language, so it's important that you say that, because I think it's not just changing the language. I think changing the language is an action that comes out of changing your mindset and your perspective. And I'm going to read you a couple more amazing quotes that I prepared a few things here. And by the way, everybody, uh, is it failure we're talking about? Is it really failure? My uh, newsletter Monday, which I have every Monday on LinkedIn, is going to be that title. And we're going to be talking a little bit about what Scott and I are talking about today in that. But I, uh, you know, I want to read a couple things here by first is John Wooden. I love John Wooden, an amazing coach. He said, failure isn't fatal, but failure to change might be.
Mm-hmm.
So, are you adapting? Are you moving? We're taking this word, we're looking at it. I look at what Zig Ziglar says. Zig was an amazing person. I've been blessed to be connected with his son and his past assistant, which is
Mm-hmm.
amazing. But he said, it's not how far you fall, but how high you bounce that counts. I love
Mm-hmm.
that. I love that. To people think about failure as falling, right? As crashing and burning. And I love that. It doesn't matter how far you fall and if you fail, it's how high you bounce that counts. And I love that because it's the rebound. What are you doing? What are you choosing to do? In my book coming up, Life Happens and Then You Choose is about that. Life happens, bad things happen, we fail, we other people do terrible things to us, but then how do we react to that?
Mm-hmm.
And one last thing, and then I'm going to turn it back over to you, Scott, and that is um, by failing to prepare, we are preparing to fail. Benjamin Franklin. So
Yep.
my thought on that is thinking, what exactly are you doing? Because a lot of times our results are our own making. It is the results of our own non-preparation, learning, whatever the case might be. We're not prepared, and so we're going to fail, or however you want to put that, we're going to crash and burn if we don't really work at it. And a lot of times we all do that. We jump into things and we're not really prepared. And I think we need to do some preparation in life. Scott?
We learn that in Sunday school when we're studying the Bible, and it
That's right.
says count the cost before you start building the tower, because you run out of funds partway through, it's going to be embarrassing. So I love this comment from Christine to are you celebrating small victories? This is part of that language, and so I'll just throw another quote out there. And it's from the management guru who actually created the Toyota system, who was an American engineer, but his theories weren't accepted in the U.S. So he went over to Japan, and Edwards Deming says that change is not necessary because survival is not mandated. Change is not necessary because survival is not. That means we are going to change, and this comes down to that choice. So if I start something, if I start a new program in my business, or I try a new endeavor, and it doesn't sell, right? I put it out there, and nobody's interested in it. Did it fail? Well, I'm going to make the decision that I'm going to stop offering it because it's not resonating. So I'm making a decision. I'm not going to say it failed. I'm going to say I'm going to make the decision to stop offering it and make that change, because I do choose to survive, following Deming's advice. So let me throw a TED talk out that you can look up. Eddie Obeng, Obeng. Eddie talks about these are the paradigms that we live with, and a lot of these paradigms are based on language. And so when we talk about things that we need to do to be successful, and Eddie Obeng in his TED talk, he says we are trained to not fail. And so he puts up on the screen two parallel lines, and then one of them, there's an arrow, and the arrow goes in, and then the lines go out. And he asks, which line is longer? And we know this is an optical illusion. And so we know the answer because we were caught when we were kids to say, oh, this line is longer, but no, it's optical illusion. And they take the little arrow things away, and both lines are the same length. So he puts it up on the screen. He says, which line is longer? And we're trained to say they're the same length, because you can't fool me twice. And actually, the line below was 20% longer than the other. And so he takes the arrows away and shows, yeah, it was. But we didn't look at it. We were just trained to answer one way. So he says, when the CEO gets up in front of the organization and says, we need to innovate to stay competitive, and all of the employees know what he's actually saying, try crazy things, get fired. Try crazy things. We need to innovate to succeed. And all the employees say, try crazy things and get fired, because what have they seen? What have they experienced? They've been conditioned that if you go out on a limb and you try something novel and it fails, you get fired.
That's true. Well, and sometimes, yes, I had a really good thought of that, but this whole thing, sometimes you try crazy things and you become Bill Gates too. It depends what crazy things you're trying. One thing that, really it is what you're doing, what you're putting out, what you're doing on things. And, the thing is too, I think, is when it comes to this whole discussion of failure, I want to read another couple quick things. Is we're talking about the things we're doing. And another thing that John Maxwell says is the difference between average people and achieving people is their perception and response to failure. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that, Scott?
Yeah. And so we do try things and they don't succeed, but right. I'm going to say again, I'm going to choose language that doesn't put me into a failure mode, because I'm not going to fail. Christine says she's decided to be unstoppable. I have decided that I am not going to fail. I am going to make a decision to discontinue something and try something else. So maybe this is a practical application.
Let me pop in there then, because there are things out of our control. Life happens, and then you choose. Sometimes you don't get to choose sometimes you don't get to choose things so to stop something and to try something new doesn't mean what you were just doing didn't fail.
Well, so we'll go back to George Orwell. When he wrote 1984, one of the things that he put in there was that the people in charge were eliminating words, right? Because they knew, and I'll say that Orwell knew, that you can control people's thinking by the type of language that they use. And sure. So they didn't say things were bad. They said things were ungood. Okay. Now in that novel, we're going to take in that this is a dystopian novel. This is a negative view of that. So I'm going to take the positive view and say, just like our Stanford professor, is that the language shapes our thinking, right? The words that we choose. So I am going to choose to not fail. I'm going to choose to make a different choice. And it still follows in with your book.
So the thing there, though, I'm going to come back with this then. And that is, I understand that. I choose to think positively and always have a good perspective. But reality tells me I am going to fail sometimes. And that sometimes it's not in my control. Sometimes it is. Reality tells me things are going to be bad sometimes. Even though I choose to look for the good, I am actually doing myself a favor by embracing that. That is why the failing forward whole perception and all of that is, I think, so important. And here's something that might get you. John Maxwell says, first you get comfortable with failure. Okay. He says, I grew up on the opposite side of the spectrum. I feared failure. I remember vividly my first college class when my professor stood up and said, hey, half of you in this room will not pass this class. I was immediately seized with fear. and I never failed a class before. So it's the whole idea of realizing that it's going to happen, but you've got to change your thinking, I think, how you're going to deal with that and the perspective you're going to move forward with once that reality happens.
So
What do you think about that?
Last September, I got to go down to September and I got to go down to Phoenix and meet Matt Rouse and Holly Jean Jackson. So we've been doing the Business Builder Throwdown for a while, but we had never met in 3D, as my wife says. So we went down there to the Business Expo, and it was a great experience. Well, we're out to dinner, and then after dinner, in the restaurant there was pool tables. So we got a pool table and we're playing. And I'll just say I happened to be that I was playing against Holly at this moment, and out of the 10 balls, she had 4 left and I had 1 left to sink, right? And so and it was my turn to shoot. So at that moment, my question to Holly was, do you believe you can win this game? Because the odds were definitely against her, right? She's got 4 balls left, I've got 1, and it's my turn to shoot. So the question is, do you believe, Holly Jackson, do you believe you can win this game? Because if you don't believe that you can win, then why even are you playing? So I'll say that there's this belief that we're going to win. Even if we go into it saying the odds are against us, but I'm still going to have that mindset that things can go my way. And
but
if I sunk that ball, then and Holly did not win that game, then that it's you could call it a failure, but it's a predicted outcome, not a failure.
Well, and there you can choose the language all day long, but the truth
Yes.
is, and I think unless you embrace the fact that bad things are going to happen and you're going to fail, and how are you going to deal with that, you're not getting yourself set up to really succeed. And I want to read you from one of the most successful people of all time, who had one of the best mindsets and set things up in his mind to always win and always do well. Michael Jordan says, I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed.
I still think it's a language issue. He did not go into that going to lose, right?
No, and that's not what failure is.
There's a probability.
Yeah. But that's not what failure. That's not what failure is. Okay, go ahead.
Is our language, if you see somebody that walking down the street and you point out, oh, that's this named person, they're a failure. That is a slur and an insult to say that they're a failure, right? This is the reason why I choose not to use the word that I choose to use different language, because that's going to color my mindset.
Okay. So let me tell you this. So I think you've got to remember you're using failure as a verb and a noun. Okay. So first off, let me tell you that when you're calling somebody a failure, okay, that is directly at them, and failing doesn't make you a failure, first off. And so I look at it this way: the verb fail, as opposed to the noun you're a failure, or the whole point of that is we will fail. That does not make us a failure. We will stumble and fall and make mistakes. That does not make us a failure. But I think that if we don't embrace the fact that those things are going to happen, then we're setting ourselves up to not be able to recover. And just like if you look at Michael Jordan's quote, but also a good batter in the major leagues, Scott, you know this, they fail over 60% of the time. meaning that they miss their pitch to and they fail hitting that ball over 60% of the time. And if you have a 350 to 375 batting average, you are doing amazingly well. But that doesn't mean that you're a failure. That just means that you failed on those opportunities to hit the ball. And no matter what you call it, it's still failure. They still failed to hit the ball.
The statistics say that they're going to fail that amount of time. And it doesn't stop them from getting a home run on pitch one.
That's right. Because they are not a failure. They are not a failure. And that's why.
But even if you go to the plate and you strike out standing and you don't swing at any pitches, right?
Yeah. Well, the point comes down to this, I believe. And you and I, this is the beautiful thing about you and I. We come to the same conclusion. We just loop around different ways because we both believe it's how you look at things. It's the perspective and mindset you have. It's how you move forward. It's how you achieve in your life and the things you do. We both believe that. But the whole thing comes down to wording. And I think part of that is, and Scott, I believe 99.9% of the things that you tell me, but I believe that you're just switching a word for a thing that's actually happening, no matter how you put it. So
yeah,
this is another
because language is important.
Yes, and I'm going to tell you a couple more wonderful people. I've got a few more great quotes that I want to tell you just while we're talking about this. Craig Rochelle.
If you guys asking, do we want popcorn?
Yes. Popcorn anyone. There you go. That's right. Thanks, Ever. Start selling popcorn. Hey, those of you that are watching, please share this out. Let people know. Scott and I've got a little time left. We're having fun. This is getting good. So now's the time you got to get your friends in and tell them jump on in. But I was going to tell you that I love this quote by Craig Rochelle. He says, failure is not an option. Failure is necessary. We try, we fail, we learn, we adjust. So you and I would both say we learn and adjust for sure, but we do try and fail at things. We do try and do not achieve them, no matter what you call that. And I love this that Craig Rochelle says too. This is a great quote. Get out of the boat, face your fears, fail, learn to adjust, try again, and watch God do more than you can imagine. And I want to give you a quick personal story. And Scott, you've heard this story, but this goes back to failure or falling. We talked about that. People use those interchangeably. When I learned how to ski, I went with friends in college. And when I learned how to ski, my friend's dad told me, you need to fall. When you're skiing, you need to fall or you're not going to learn. And I said, I don't want to fall. He goes, you have to fall. I said, I don't want to fall. He goes, if you don't fall or you don't fail to ski without falling, he says, you're not going to learn. You're not going to grow. You're not going to get better. And I took his word for it. And I got out there, fell. And by the late in that day, I had moved up 3 or 4 levels of ski slopes and I was zooming down the hill. Sure, I still fell occasionally, but I actually learned how to ski much faster because I was willing to put myself out there and give myself the opportunity to fail forward and move in a positive direction.
None of those were failures. So when you fell, it wasn't a failure.
Right? Well, it depends how you defined it. I didn't achieve it. I didn't achieve it.
You made an incremental step. Each one was an incremental step. And it had improved your skill. And it was just based on probability. And when you fell, you didn't say, oh, I failed. Oh, that was a failure of that run, right? It was never a failure. You didn't say, oh, first attempt in learning.
So when you don't achieve something that you set out to do, what do you call it?
Oh, it is. It's just learning. It's just learning, and you're just making a choice.
No, but there's something you got to call that act. You got to call that act something. Robert Kennedy said, only those who dare to fail greatly can ever achieve greatly. What do you think about that?
Well, I'll go back to Teddy Roosevelt and his the the man in the arena, you know, and there are a lot of people that have comments and opinions, but only that person that stepped into the arena and took that risk, win or lose, has an opinion that's valid, right? They're the ones with the mud and the grime and the sweat and the blood and the tears that have experienced it. And I don't count that as failure. I count that as that is just, it's part of the probability. It's funny because as you were talking about your favorite professor, my favorite professor was my probability instructor professor, as we studied probability. Made it truly understandable, and to me it comes down to probability. The baseball player, when he steps up to the plate, there's the probability. You know, if you got a 350 batting average, then only 35% of the time are they going to get a base hit. Most of the time. But what if it's a sacrifice fly? Still hurts their batting average, but they advance the batters, right? So there was some research into failed businesses, specifically banks, and they said, "Is this bad? Is this a waste of resources?" But it turns out, when they analyzed why those businesses did not succeed, they were able to learn and apply that to better banking regulation. So the entire system became stronger because someone stepped into the arena and said, I'm going to try to run this bank. I'm going to run this bank. And the probability says that less than 30% will succeed. And if you believe that you're in the 70%, then why would you even play?
However, those that are not succeeding are doing what? They're failing. And the failure they need to learn from. And I think this is where, you know, you're right. When you go into a situation, there's times that there's strategy involved in baseball. And even though you might get out, you have succeeded in your strategy because you hit a fly ball in order to get somebody in, to get an RBI. You did something to actually achieve the goal that you were trying to achieve. But so often we just go flat out and try to do something and it doesn't happen. We fail at it. Life happens and then we choose. That's when we choose. How do we look at that? What do we do from there? How do we call that? What are we actually, calling the next step and things we're doing? Because I agree with you. I never set out to fail. I never set out to do things. And anybody with a good mindset and a positive outlook does not do that. But we come to the reality that sometimes that happens. Sometimes, whether it's of our own accord or because of other circumstances, it happens. But then we remember we're not the product of our circumstances and they don't define us. So we can keep a positive mindset. And that's what's really helped me, Scott, in all reality, is the fact that I have learned to, mostly from my reading of God's word and in the Bible, I've learned to overcome failure in my life, whether my own accord or others, with a positive outlook and a positive attitude, knowing that all things work for the good, Romans 8:28, and that no matter what happens to me, I'm going to move in that positive direction. But it doesn't mean I didn't fail first.
Well, I know we're talking the same language again, as you say. We're coming at it from different perspective, and Thomas Edison, just dredging up another historical figure, and many of us know that the lab that he was running and all of the personnel that he had were trying to make an electric light bulb, and there were many attempts using different materials and how much gas or no gas or whatever should be in the bulb, and all these different things. And finally, they were able to create the electric light bulb. But he was interviewed along the way, and the reporter wanted to catch him to say he had failed. But there was let's say it was 107 different iterations in the light bulb, and not one of them worked. And he could say, I have failed 107 times. But what he said is, I know 107 ways not to make a light bulb. So I would say that's 107 successes. Because you're iterating on the way to success.
We need to do this more often. This is fun. So I want to tell you though, I did, because I know you did your research and I did too, because I wanted to have fun with this. I have a quote from Thomas Edison that says, I have not failed. I have just found 10,000 ways that won't work. But he did acknowledge failure. And that's my point there is
Perfect. He
looked,
acknowledged that he did not fail because he never attempted to fail.
exactly. But he brought the good side of it up, but he acknowledged failure.
So thank you for putting a quote out there that supports my side of the screen.
Well, listen, I want to end this off with another really good, a really good quote. And, I love music and so do you.
Mm-hmm.
But this quote is by Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash said, you build on failure, or whatever you call it, Scott. You use it as a stepping stone, close the door to the past. You don't try to forget the mistakes, but you don't dwell on it. You don't let it have any of your energy. And that's important, that things like that steal your energy. Your mindset, if you're stuck in failure, it will suck the energy out of you. And it won't let it have any of your energy or any of your time or any of your space. And I think that quote alone, Scott, brings us back to where we agree. And that is, whether you change the name of failure or whether you acknowledge the name of failure, you're coming around to not letting failure suck the life out of you, the energy out of you, and choosing the positive perspective and the positive side of things. And that is where I think you and I can agree. We want to leave this with people tonight, and that is, look at life with a positive perspective and a positive mindset, because things are going to happen. Life is going to happen. And then you're going to have to choose, whether it's of your own accord or other people and the circumstances that happen to you. Things are going to happen. And those choices and how you look at things and the words you use, because words mean things.
Yeah, absolutely.
The words you use are going to shape where you go from there and how you do. Right, Scott?
Yeah, there's a quote from one of my favorite authors. Oh, it's me. And on leadership, I say we develop leaders, and this can be yourself, by the way. You can develop yourself as a leader. We develop leaders by creating opportunities where failure is an option. So there, even in my own quote, quoting myself, I do use the word failure, but what we're looking at is what is non-fatal in failure, right? So if I think, oh, I'm going to take my car and I can beat that train across the railroad tracks, failure there is fatal. So you know what? I'm not going to do that. And I won't put somebody into a situation where if they make a decision and it goes wrong, it doesn't go as planned, and people's lives are at risk or the company fails, there's that word again. I'm gonna say that was a bad choice on my part. But if you want to develop somebody, then you want to develop their leadership, then put them in charge of a project where if it is not successful, people's lives are not lost, jobs are not lost, the company does not end up in bankruptcy, but the person learns and develops from it. So you put them onto the bunny hill. You didn't, by the way, when you started skiing, you didn't take the chair up on a black double diamond to come down, right? I mean, that
started on the bunny hill.
Yeah, but yeah, you started on a gentle slope, and when you fell, and you knew you were going to fall, it was not fatal. It did not stop you from continuing to ski.
No.
Had you gone right up to a black double diamond and you fell, you maybe not have stopped until you were a bag of broken bones at the bottom of an extremely steep slope. So we develop leaders, and that can be ourselves, by creating options where failure is an option.
Right. Well, I think everybody, I just want to, I love what Christine says.
Mm.
And the reason I love this comment is because, words do vibrate in your life. They do
Mhm.
make a difference because words mean things. And
Yeah.
we are having so much fun because Scott and I come back to the same conclusion in this whole thing. Whether we agree or not, whether it's called failure or not, things happen, like I said, and then we choose where we're going to go from there. And so, however you look at that, use the situations in your life where I call them failure, but Scott doesn't, where we stumble and things happen and problems happen, and we choose to look at the positive side of that. We choose to look and make that into something good. And I truly believe that. I truly believe you all watching. And by the way, for those who've not had a chance tonight, please share this out. Those that are watching tonight, and let others know, because they'll sit there and they can watch on replay. But this is a really important topic because where you come out at the end is what's important. What you choose to do at the end is what's important. How you look at your life, what's happening, good or bad, is important. And Scott, you have taught me well to really get out there and take a chance and do things. And there is always that fear of failure, no matter what you call it. There's that fear that it's not going to work out. And you overcome that by taking one step at a time, by being willing to get out there and make a difference, like me, being willing to fall and get back up again. Because it's not the falling that is really threatening to anything you do. It's not getting back up again,
Keep
not getting
bouncing.
back up, not taking another step. Right, Scott?
Absolutely. Bounce high. That's I've got the book Freeze behind me. That was the joint book that Veronica Jeans and I did together. And in there's a practical process for how to overcome these challenges that come your way. So whether you call it failure, whether you call it opportunities, or you call it challenges, diversions, whatever it is, whatever that phrase is, things will come your way. In that book, Freeze, we lay out a process for you to find what are the opportunities in that, right? So, we have all heard those kinds of stories that says, I was late to this appointment because the train was in the way and I had to wait. But had I been there, I would have been involved in a multiple car accident. And, so there are things that happen that are out of our control. But you can find the benefits if you choose. Live the life you choose. It was such a great phrase, Russ. When
Thank
you
you.
came up with that.
Well, it is true, and I live by that. And one thing I just want to remind everybody, you can go to D. Scott Smith and get access to his amazing books like Freeze that he wrote with Veronica Jeans and the different things he's done. I'm part of a project I mentioned coming up with Lonnie Ray and some other amazing people. And the whole concept of this book is life-changing events that a lot of times are not good, but where you go from there, how it changed your perspective, and how it made a difference in your life. And so many of you know my story, the cancer journey over the last year, and the things that have gone along with that. Keep moving forward. Keep a positive perspective. There's brighter days ahead. And Scott and I truly believe that. And if you want to, here's Scott's contact information. My contact information is all in the show notes too. All of it's going to be clickable for you guys to get to. And D. Scott Smith, RussHedge.com. We would love to talk with you. We'd love to connect with you. And please join us every Thursday, 4 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time for Russ Reels Live. Next week, we have got a great panel of about 7 people on an amazing topic, and you don't want to miss it. So I appreciate you, Scott, coming on tonight. Been a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely, Russ. It's always great to hang out with you, even if it's digitally. But I love those opportunities we get to be face to face, like recently sitting in the backyard of your house. That was precious times.
Yes, and our season 6 intro has got one of those pictures and some changes. And Scott, it's great to get together with you, and the fact that you came and visited me when uh, I needed some live people to talk to. I appreciate that. So, anyway, okay. Well, listen, I'm going to just sign off, Scott, with you here today, reminding everybody that we're here at 4 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time every Thursday. Go to russhedge.com or dscottsmith.com and join Scott and I Wednesday mornings at 7 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time on the Experience Live with Russ and Scott, also on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube, the mediums that's on tonight. And we do an Instagram show before that called The Experience Backstage on Instagram only, 6:30 a.m. with our friend Shri every Wednesday morning. So we'd love to have you join us there. And until next week here on Russ Reels Live, have a great day and a great life, everybody. We'll see you then. Bye.